You're listening to the Dibbly-Dobbly podcast. Remember to like, share, comment, subscribe, and click the bell to make sure you get the latest episodes of the podcast. Be sure to like and share our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter and on Instagram. In our cricket discussion episodes with Mike Coward, Gideon Haigh, and Bharat Sundaresan, we discuss the state of international cricket. Let's move on to our next topic and talk about the current state of international cricket, Mike, because the game at an international level is facing many problems, and all countries in the ICC need to try and solve those problems. But too many to list here today, Mike. But just to name a few, inequity and distribution of funds amongst all full member countries of the ICC and associate members, and it's clear to see that India is getting big slice of the pie, and then you have Australia and England, and then you have all the other countries trying to fight for the crumbs. And then you have the franchise and T20 cricket changing players' priorities and choosing that route because their home countries can't afford to pay them enough. And we see that from many countries around the world where players are choosing that option just to get by. So there's a few problems the game faces at an international level. Also, Mike, I don't know if it's me or you may see this too, but I've always noticed there's always been a reluctance in world cricket to help one another out in the world cricket community. Countries care about their self-interests. You should help each other for the greater good of the game. I think ever since the ICC was created back in 1909, as they were known as the Imperial Cricket Conference, and they changed their name to ICC in 1964. This reluctance has always been there ever since cricket was established, really, especially when the West Indies, India and New Zealand came into the fold and joined Australia, England and South Africa at the time. Australia and England didn't really play them as much and didn't really play much against South Africa either. Australia, an example, it took them until basically 1950, 51, 52 to play against the West Indies in a test match. And it took them until 1945, 46 to play New Zealand in a test match. And being so close to New Zealand, we haven't done much to help New Zealand cricket out over the years either. And then it took them until 1947, 48 to play a test match against India. So you get the idea, you get the picture that we've always had this reluctance to help in world cricket, especially those countries I mentioned, but also as the years progressed, Pakistan, then Sri Lanka, then Zimbabwe, now Ireland and Afghanistan have joined. So, Mike, how would you assess the state of international cricket, and why do we have this reluctance to help one another out in the cricket community?
It's a good question. The biggest problem now is that there's a devaluation, and I think it's a societal problem to a large degree. And as John Arlott always said, the game is a microcosm of society. Whatever's happening in society is reflected in cricket. And Arlott was right. And the devaluation of what has gone before I think, is a massive issue. Not just within the game, but within society. The devaluation of history, or the indifference to history, if not the devaluation, the indifference to what has gone before. We've created a world, or seem to have created a world which moves at such a pace that we don't have time to stop and to consider what has gone before. And I think the devaluation, within a cricket context, the devaluation of what's gone before is becoming very, very serious. We've seen now what's happened to the West Indies. The West Indies, they're partly to blame themselves, and it's for many complicated reasons, societal reasons. They are disparate countries that make in the archipelago, which they only come together to play cricket in the name of the West Indies. On every other score, they work as separate entities. So, there are very complex issues around the West Indies. That aside, but yes, there has been an indifference for a long time. you can nearly extend the argument to what I was saying about Australia's attitude to the subcontinent in the 60s and 70s, that how much of this is culturally elitist and how much is racist. That's tough talk. I understand that, and I don't mean to be outrageous, but there's no doubt that the rich first world countries have always prospered, and often it has been at the expense of the developing countries. And the same thing is happening now. Zimbabwe's got such massive economic and political issues that it's very difficult for it to rise above everything, sadly. I've made 2 or 3 tours of Zimbabwe, and it's a wonderful country, hospitable country. It looks very much like Australia, with a number of eucalypts and the desert and one thing or another. It's got a really Australian feel. Be you in Harare or Bulawayo, but there's a desperate sadness there. And this is the other thing, of course, with Pakistan. I mean, there was no contact with Pakistan for so long because of the extreme political issues. And I mean, it's still got them to a large degree, you know, with what's happened with Imran Khan in recent times, one thing or other. So in fairness to cricket itself, the most politically and economically stable countries have managed better than the developing countries we played cricket during the Sri Lankan Civil War, for instance. They kept going over that long civil war. Even in Muralitharan, as a Tamil, was playing in the side while the war raged. Afghanistan, it's an impossible situation. So we've got to be fair, but there is no doubt, I think, coming back to what we were saying earlier about the distribution of funds, that the game doesn't do enough beyond the boundary in the realms of health and education. And there's no doubt that it could do more within the game itself to ensure a greater stability in the leadership. But in the essence, it all comes back to the stability and the country's preparedness to have a stable administration. So that you can point the finger, but there's got to be greater resourcefulness in many of the constituents of the ICC, greater stability, and certainly less corruption, Jack, I think we can say, without causing too much trouble.
Yeah,
I mean,
whenever there's money and greed involved, that always comes into it.
Corruption is a huge issue in Sri Lanka and a huge issue in Pakistan and India.
As we've noticed over the years, especially certain players, match fixing and all that stuff, which is a very, very sticky sort of topic to discuss. But will it get better, or do you think it will get worse as the years go by, international cricket? Or do you think international cricket as we know it will probably not be here?
No, I think it can prosper, but it can't prosper without decisive and aggressive leadership. Now, the ICC is amongst the most impotent bodies in world sport. And that is a huge issue, and it's been forever thus. I mean, the ICC is nothing other than a collective of its constituent bodies. Now, whether it's time for a radical redrafting of the structure of the game, and that there is some body that is independent of the constituents or has a representative of each of the constituents, but 2 or 3 independent members are sitting alongside the representative of the constituents. Perhaps that's the way to go. I'm not sure. But clearly, the ICC as it is I mean, there's always the speculation, well, because of the richness of India, India has the greatest slice of the pie. But India is also contributing a massive amount of money internationally, as well as domestically, particularly through the IPL and the television rights for any of its tours. And it's significant that in recent times that the only 5-match test series historically has been between England and Australia. But it has been determined now that the future Border Gavaskar series, be it in India or in Australia, will be played over 5 test matches. So that is a pointer to the significance of Indian cricket and the worth of the television rights for an Border Gavaskar series. There's no doubt the devaluation has come about because of the short form. There's no doubt about that. They're playing too much cricket. There's no doubt too much cricket is being played. I defy anybody, even the most passionate cricket people, to keep track of what's happening at every level of the game. It's not possible.
No.
While I accept that it is providing opportunity for more players and for more people around the game, like medical, physiotherapists, psychologists, the rest of it. Yes, opportunities are there. But if they're not careful, it was always said after World Series that they're playing too much, they'll kill the goose that laid the golden egg. And really, I think they risk that, particularly in England. I mean, what's the 100 all about? I mean, what does that mean? I mean, if you keep your domestic T20 competition anyway, why the 100? Yeah. I mean, it was Sir Andrew Strauss's thought bubble. I don't know. As far as I'm concerned, they're playing too much. What's happening now is that you've got very clearly defined audiences. I don't watch IPL. I might watch part of the BBL. I watch the final, certainly, but I would still watch the traditional game and love Test match cricket. But what you're doing now is, in the old days, they'd say, the number of people who'll come to the one-day game, they'll come across and start to enjoy the 5-day game. It's never happened. Very, very rarely happened. You might have a few that love 50 over cricket, and particularly World Cups. I love World Cups. There's no doubt about that, 50 over World Cups. But the T20 World Cups played every 2 years. What does that mean? I mean, that's not an event. It's just something that's going to pop up every 2 years. I mean, you've got to be able to look forward, like a World Cup over 4 years, and Olympic Games over a period of time when you can think and plan. But, it's, I don't know. Fundamentally, we're playing far too much cricket.
Yeah. I think many people would agree with you there, Mike. But how do you see the future of the 3 formats? Test cricket faces an uncertain future, and as you've spoken about just now, you're passionate about it. So am I, and other people who are listening are passionate about Test cricket because of the history and the traditions that we hold dearly. But that faces problems around the world in some countries that are not performing as well. As you mentioned, the West Indies, and also T20 cricket teams like South Africa, for example, when they're touring New Zealand next year, they won't send a full-strength test squad to tour because their South African T20 comp is at the same time and they want their best players there. And many people have said that the way that England have played with Bazball recently, as we saw in the Ashes, Mike, are saying that it's bringing people back to Test cricket, making it entertaining and exciting. No doubt it is. But that can be a little bit misleading if you look at other parts of the world, because it is not prospering. It's not alive and well. It's only alive and well in Australia, India, and England, basically. Other countries lose money when they play Test cricket. So that faces an uncertain future. Then you have one-day cricket, and I think the MCC said in 2027 you'll be gone altogether in terms of bilateral series, and we'll just have World Cups every 4 years. And then T20 cricket is dictating the course of international cricket as we know it now. And, franchises could have multi-year contracts with players, and players will forego their national contract with their country to choose the T20 route, and the franchises will have control over that. despite despite people saying it's bad for the game. There's a lot of positives and negatives about T20 cricket, but many people are saying that it's probably not helping the game in certain areas. So how do you see the future of the three formats, Mike? Do you think we'll only have two, one, or that's how it's going to be for the years to come?
Hard to know, Jack. The key thing with cricket, I think, is do you remember it? You remember so little about T20 cricket that it defies description. I mean, but perhaps the modern generation, because they pay so little attention to what's gone before, it doesn't matter that they can't remember it. It's just for the moment. They're stimulated. They've got 3 hours of entertainment, and that does them. Perhaps that's the way it's gone. I'm of a school, as you are, that one of the joys is recalling what's happened, talking about the joy of it, and you can recall those moments. And one of the real problems of the amount of cricket's being played now, that too much is lost within this morass. And no one. Who was the BBL finalist last year? How many? Not a clue. But we can remember perfectly well, a Test match series. But I accept that I'm of an old school, and that the young ones coming through. I know a lot of men and women in their 20s and 30s who still love Test match cricket. So I hope that there will be enough of them for it to continue. Future formatting is very difficult to know. The 50 over World Cup is, people say, the 50 over has to go because of the success of T20 cricket. But see, T20 cricket is not particularly useful from a television standpoint. It's over so quickly in terms of advertising timeframes and things like that. The World Cup, 50 over World Cup, generates massive amount of money through television rights and advertising. So that's always a plus, even if they don't play much other than the World Cup. But that does generate colossal funds. I don't know, Jack. I really don't. It's changed so dramatically. One of the interesting things you made reference to World Series cricket earlier. We always talked about World Series cricket as being the great revolution, and it was a great revolution. But there have been two greater revolutions in many ways. 1983, when India suddenly somehow won the World Cup in England. An astonishing achievement by Kapil Dev. And that changed the mentality of India totally. And they became completely obsessed by the 50 over game. Fast forward to, 2004, I think, 2004, and the first T20 World Cup in South Africa. Or was it later? It was 2007?
It was 2007.
2007. And India left out half their side, including Tendulkar, Lakshman, and I can't remember the other, Dravid, I think. There were 3 or 4 of the absolute guns were left out of the side. And of course, India still managed to win it. And of course, the entire country was then seduced by T20 cricket. So talk about World Series, but, don't forget the revolutions of 83 and 2007, because they've had a bigger and more dramatic effect on the way the game has developed and evolved. So, I don't know where you go from now. And of course, Kumar Sangakkara, who I admire enormously, has over the last 2, 3 or 4 years been playing T10 cricket in the UAE quite successfully. And there's a great push for T10 cricket to be the next step forward. So unless we're seers, clairvoyants, or what, Jack, I've got absolutely no idea. But
I suppose that's the beauty of the future. You just don't know what's gonna
Well, yes, it is, but it's also the fear of the present, because you need responsible decisions to be taken today to ensure some sort of assured future.
Maybe it's probably a little bit too late to try and solve those problems. Maybe. I think. Let's talk about our next topic, Gideon. Let's talk about the state of international cricket. And there are many problems facing the game internationally. The game's three formats, their future, the international schedule, calendar, and the ICC's governance. So Gideon, how do you see the future of the three formats, and your thoughts on the international schedule and calendar? Can that be improved, or is it too late to fix that? It's already gone. And how the ICC have gone about governing the game, in your opinion?
God, how long have you got? Well, the overwhelming factor in everything, it's the biggest advantage and the biggest threat to international cricket, is the huge asymmetry that's opened up between India and the rest of the world. The game has never been richer, but it's also never been relatively poorer in various places. That huge problem, which I don't think any other game has in the world, any other sort of international game, where one country is so overwhelmingly economically and administratively powerful, is a huge factor. And the failure of the ICC to do anything to kind of counteract or mitigate that, the general weakness at the centre of cricket governance, is now coming home to roost. There was an opportunity for governance reform at the ICC in 2012. That everyone funked it. Everyone thought that it would be advantageous to themselves to have a weak centre. Everyone thought that it was advantageous to potentially subvert the system. Well, now they've found out that that they failed. They missed their opportunity, and now in this next potential distribution for the next 4 years, that's been foreshadowed that the ICC will vote on in the next month or so, shows that the game's in a pathetic state. That India will end up, when India already so hugely richer than everywhere else, just simply because of the lucrative nature of the IPL, will also rake off the lion's share of proceeds from international cricket, is a massive failure of imagination, and a massive indictment of those in charge.
Yeah. So do you see the future looking grim? Do you think countries will struggle? And do you think that they'll pull out of cricket altogether? Probably.
Well, I think that I don't see any forces around to change that. I think everyone kind of understands the problems, but there's no one around who's actually willing to posit a solution. And the formula that the ICC has arrived at is a prescription for sort of assisted suicide of international cricket. I think we're already seeing that the franchise future of the game being manifest, which raises a whole heap of problems. Because the franchise game is essentially parasitic on international cricket. It is dependent on all those nurseries around the cricket world for developing the players that franchises want to exploit. But franchises don't care a damn for cricket. They're only interested in the profit motive, and the people who are about to own these franchises have no loyalty to the game either. If they weren't investing in cricket, they'd be investing in chopped liver. They'd be investing in another industry. It just so happens that cricket offers lucrative returns. So, I've enjoyed cricket, but I'm not sure that the game won't look the same when my daughter comes time to savor the game. But look, I've had my time. Maybe I shouldn't mourn too much. Change is inevitable. It's happening at a speed now, rather like AI in some ways, where it doesn't feel like we're in control anymore. It feels as though decisions are being made remotely and inevitably not according to any kind of strategic thought, but simply for short-term benefits. So, yeah, it's a problem. But,
whenever there's
frankly,
money and that involved, it's always greed and selfishness and not thinking about others and the greater good of the game. And that's what's happening in world cricket at the moment, which is a shame. Bharat, we'll move on to our next topic and talk about international cricket. I know everyone keeps talking about the state of the game and it's got too many problems. You and me can't solve the problems of the game here today. But there's so many problems with the game, the 3 formats, the future of them, the rise of T20 franchise cricket, and the IPL is going to start at the end of this month until May. So, it's going for nearly 3 months. So stuff like that. And it is changing the ICC governance and India's influence on cricket, which is well prevalent now. How do you assess the state of international cricket now, Bharat? Are we in for some tough years ahead, or this is just the new normal now of cricket and we just have to deal with it?
I guess it starts with how you perceive as an individual what international cricket is, or in 2025, and what you want it to be like. I mean, I think it's a very human thing to not accept change. We all do it in our respective lives. Like, I'm a huge wrestling fan. Like, would I want wrestling to go back to the Attitude Era, where there is a WWF and a WCW, and there's Monday Night Raw versus Monday Nitro? Of course I would. Like, that's what I grew up on, and that's what I enjoyed the most growing up. So I mean, from a cricket sense, like even now, like, which cricket tragic wouldn't want us to go back to the days of Benson and Hedges cricket, and in the Tri-Series cricket, where 12 games and then the best of 3 finals and all of that, like, because that's what we grew up on. That's what, like, we fell in love with cricket for in many ways. But the other way of looking at it is, so who benefited when those, like, when we loved cricket the most, the 90s and maybe till the mid 2000s? So was the rest of the cricket world really benefiting? I mean, you can say, yeah, New Zealand and South Africa and West Indies were all playing a lot of cricket, but once cricket, like any other sport, became a business, and once broadcasting took off like it has around the world, you just had to read the tea leaves and kind of, I'm not saying condone every change that's happened and like be okay with how much it has changed, but just accept the fact that things were going to change, right? Like, yeah, we're not going to go back to the heady heights of South Africa and New Zealand playing 3 match test series, and Australia and West Indies playing 5 tests against each other. Everything's become more expensive, like hosting test cricket, and some countries just are like, they're not able, like, there's always this, there are 2 views, and trust me, before we go anywhere with this answer, personally, I would love cricket to be the way it was, like, everyone playing against each other, everybody being on an equal footing, like it used to feel like it was the case back in the 90s. But the big change for me that happened was not even what India has done, or like, what's happened to the other countries. It's basically how much power players had over decisions regarding their own career back in the 90s and before the IPL maybe, and how much more power they have and how many more choices they have to make with regards to their own career. And we often forget that as people in the media, or people, like, as fans, that at the end of the day, the entertainment for us is provided by the players. I mean, yeah, teams matter, countries matter, but the players matter the most, right? And I think that has been the huge change when you look at experts talk about the master-slave relationship that always existed between boards and their players, which is why players would go on strike, which is why the Kerry Packer revolution happened, which is why, so many times players and the boards had clashes, but the boards always won back in the day, right? Like, they always got their say, which is what has been the huge change, or the biggest change, once private investment came into cricket via the IPL, that so then it became a very business transaction. Like, yeah, you're a player, so it's about you, yes, playing sport at the highest level, playing for your country, but at the same time making the most out of all the sacrifices that you make to play at the highest level. There's a reason why less than 500 men have played Test cricket for Australia since 1877. We are 148 years into playing or into Australia being a Test cricket or Test cricket being a thing. But less than 500 people have played Test cricket for Australia. I mean, that should tell you a lot about how difficult it is to get to that stage. And what I mean by that is, now if you are a player and if you want to decide what career path you want to take, I mean, whether it's a Trent Bolt deciding to play franchise cricket where he's still young and he could possibly still play Test cricket for the future of his family, or so many other players from everywhere taking that call. It's not just New Zealand and South Africa and West Indies, even Indian, Australian, English. I mean, not so many Indian players, but Australian English players have taken decisions on how they want their career to go. So once that happened, the whole outlook towards the future of cricket and not the future, just even the current climate of cricket was going to change. So like the bargaining power that the players have a lot more now goes with, like, some people might question, Cummins, Hazelwood and Stark and should have been there for the Champions Trophy playing for their country. Yeah, but they also have just finished a very tough, arduous Test series where they've had to bowl a lot of overs. I mean, Hazelwood was injured for most of it, but Cummins and Stark
played 7 on the trot.
And there you go. Like, yeah, and Stark played the 2 in Sri Lanka as well. So then, like, they are still human beings, and like, so these decisions, these back in the day, they didn't have that control over their careers, over their contracts. And we're talking about 90s. There were not even central contracts back then. Now they have. I mean, they have the power to say, look, I'll still stay fresh for the Ashes. I'll still stay fresh for the World Test Championship final. I just need to tend to these niggling injuries I have, and then, like, do justice to the big paycheck I'm getting from the IPL. So what's wrong with that? Like, if I can sit here and I can say, look, I'm at a stage in my career, Jack, where I don't need a permanent employer. I can be contracted by 5 different places for TV, radio, print, broadcast, websites or whatever. And why shouldn't the player have the same choice? And I think people forget that when they always look at it from a very utopian way of saying, like, oh no, I mean, Ireland should play more Test cricket, and Afghanistan is not, forget about the politics side of it, but just as the new Test team, they should be playing more Test cricket. I mean, it's easier said than done. It's not easy to host any of this. And the big change was going to be the IPL, and not the IPL as a tournament, but once the BCCI brought in these big industrialists and people of money and people who are business people into the industry, they were always going to treat it like a business. And that is the future going forward. India, Australia and England will play a lot of Test cricket against each other. And also, I think another thing that has happened is people are so focused on linear thinking, where the moment you hear 2-tier system, that's it. That means nobody will play against each other. And that's where they misunderstand or don't completely understand the Indian psyche or the psyche of the Indian cricket fan. As much as they love watching Indian cricket, they consume more international cricket than anyone else. I mean, when there's the Ashes on, enough people watch in India as much as, say, Australia and England, or maybe even more do. So India will want the Indian team playing throughout the year. So you can't always just play England and Australia. So India will continue playing with everyone else. And the question I always ask when this comes up is, and I've written about it in the past, like, so Indian cricket will treat world cricket like, it's sort of like, the best analogy I can come up with, it's almost like a kingdom. So they will make sure everybody makes more money than they did the previous year, they being not India. I mean, say Zimbabwe will make more money this year than they did last year, and so on and so forth. But it's not going to be egalitarian. That's just, in the whole concept of power and wealth sharing culturally works differently in the subcontinent than it does anywhere else. And the other question to be asked is, so when England and Australia were running the sport, when they were in power for 100 years, like, what did they do for India, Pakistan, West Indies? I mean, Australia played West Indies every year in the 80s. when West Indies were a cash cow, right? They were such an entertaining team that everybody wanted to watch them. Australia didn't have India over between 91, 92 and 99, 2000. Like, imagine that. Like, imagine in the current climate where India here every year or Australia and India every other year. So,
yeah, well,
and
Mark
that's how.
Howard made a good point about that as well. When he wrote that book on
Exactly. Yeah, very much so. And
Yeah.
like, so, and I'm not saying that this is right and that is wrong, but and I'm not indulging in whataboutery, but that's just the reality. That's just how it was. Like, so once the power shift happened, India were going to run it the way they know how to run things. Like, that's just, they were not going to run it. You can't use the Western first world ideologies to say that, no, but you need to run it like that. Everybody needs to be equal. But that's just not how the understanding is. And the funny thing is, when I speak to people in power in India about how, like, about these conversations, no, everybody needs, forget about them, like, dismissing it. They just don't even get the concept. Just like in this part of the world, you don't get the concept of how it works over there, like how divided society is over there, right? So it's really complex, and it's like, personally, I would love for, like, more tri-series and the kind of cricket that I grew up on to be a thing. But sadly, and just look at the numbers, dwindling numbers when it comes to attendances, like, when it's not Australia England, when it's not Australia India, it's when it's not India England, it's just a reality. I mean, I can't stress on it enough. Yes, you'll have the occasional great test match or the great series, and immediately people will go on. That's what I mean, right? That's how the media has changed. You asked me that question earlier, right? People are just waiting to jump on and, like, wave flags and say, oh, what about the two-tier system now? Look, New Zealand and South Africa just played a great test match. But what's the feasibility of that? What's the sustainability of that? Everything has gotten more expensive. And, so that's just the reality of things. So, I mean, I can't stress enough on how much I wish it wasn't the case. But, I mean, you just have to accept change at times.
Yes, I suppose the world's changing and the sport's changed for generations, and people have to accept that, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, it's right. I mean, think about it, right? Like, back in the 50s and 1960s, even New Zealand and Australia, what New Zealand didn't play in Australia for 20 years. Like, so, like, Australia and England did treat it as their fiefdom for the longest time, didn't they? Like, it was their sport. So they decided who played and how much they played. And for the longest time, that didn't happen. Like, so the lesser teams, whether it was India or Pakistan or say West Indies before they became a thing, were treated like, so again, it's again, I'm not saying that was the world that we lived in back then. This is the world we live in right now. So it will change. Wrestling has changed. Like, wrestling's on Netflix now, which is kind of bizarre when you think about it. So if wrestling can change, cricket can change too, and we should change with it. Our outlook has to change. I mean, there is no utopia anymore. And if you actually, and I've learned it, like, this is how I've got my head around how things are now, by looking at it from the player's perspective. Once you start looking at it from the player's perspective, and once you start thinking about the fact that, or acknowledging the fact that, without these players doing what they do, we won't have jobs and we won't be entertained the way we are as fans, I think you'll start getting your head around, like, where cricket is and where it's going. Test cricket will never die. Don't worry about that. One day cricket, well, who knows? And the ICC tournaments will be designed in a way where if you're a broadcaster, you want critical mass. Like, you're paying billions of dollars now. They were not paying millions and billions of dollars in the 90s and 80s, right? Or even like 20 years ago. Now they are playing billions of dollars. So they want the best output for them, right?
And that's why we have a tournament every year since.
Exactly. Yeah. So that we can get an India-Pakistan match every year. So even though India-Pakistan matches have become so one-sided and boring, it's just how it is.
Yes. Yeah, I totally agree with that, Bharat. And I think everyone needs to. I get that a lot on the podcast. People saying, "Oh, we should go back to the old days and all this stuff."
I wish we could. Like, I wish I could go back to being a child. Yeah.
Realistically, the world is a different place.
It is. The economy has changed. The world order has changed.
Yes, and I think it was Don Bradman. Greg Chappell said to Don Bradman when he asked him about World Series cricket, "Why were you against it?" He said, "Greg, when sports becomes a business, it loses something." And he's right.
He's absolutely right. But the fact is, it has become a business. Like, what can you do about it? Like, you'll have to take it back to its roots if you want to change things, where it wasn't a business. Like, and everything's a business. Like, once you and it's just going to grow more and more into becoming a business. Like, once whether it's the IPL franchises having taken over, or IPL people like the IPL owners. There are IPL owners, but there are others as well who have now come and buying stuff in the 100 private investment. Players getting more and more powerful once they get contracts from those people and not their national board. So that's just the future. Like, you just have to ride with it. Obviously the advantage though in 2025 is all the nostalgia content is out there on YouTube or all these crazy people on social media. I don't know. I'm such a big
Belinda, on YouTube.
Absolutely. And there are so many more. Like, I'm such admirers of, like, I always sit there and watch these clips of these, not even just the famous games, but like these obscure matches, and go, how amazing are you people that you have access to these videos, and where do you get them from? But it's all there. So, I do indulge in like my nostalgia very often. Whether it's wrestling or cricket or music. It's another great thing. Like, look, I like, as a metalhead, I want music to be like thrash metal, to be as raw as it was in the 80s, like, before I grew up. But the metal music I grew up on. But by the 90s, things had changed. By the 2000s, and now, like, so, but I can't sit here and say, I can't sit here and say, I wish music could go back to the way it was, where there was not so much of an electronic influence. But then, who am I kidding? Like, it's changed. Like, wake up, smell the coffee, Bharat. Like, so that's just how it is.
Yeah, I suppose that's the case with everything in life now. Good to hear your thoughts on that, Bharat, and I'm sure people would be very interested to hear your thoughts on international cricket there.
I might not like it, but like, it's just a fact.
Yes, but we move on. Hope you enjoyed hearing the thoughts on the state of international cricket from Mike Coward, Gideon Haigh, and Bharat Sundaresan. Let us know in the comments your thoughts on the state of international cricket.